I believe in a union structure for the EU. This is a compromise between the old Europe of independent nation states and a superstate. The fundamental difference between a union structure and a superstate structure is that the control over power, fields of authority and means, often money, for the EU will always lie in the hands of the member states and thus not in the hands of EU institutions, because then you have a superstate by definition. Therefore, in a union structure, EU Parliament will never get the right for initiative, because then it could draw powers towards it, and that would de facto mean a superstate. I think that this union structure reflects who we are. We are not one people, nor one country, so a superstate simply doesn't fit. Given the fact that we are very interdependent, it is also unrealistic to think that this continent can be stable if it only consists of independent nation states, which is something the right-wing populists want. This is simply not who we are either, and besides this, it will never work. Such a Europe would only work if the nation states would have no crucial interests in other nation states, and if all nation states would be equally strong. None of this is the case. The populist Europe is unrealistic. We need a structure in between, and that is the union structure. The main task of the EU should be to assist countries in making treaties, implement them as far as the EU plays a role in this, and above all, to take care that everybody who signed these treaties respects them. The real crisis in the EU is that countries can break the rules with impunity. In the Maastricht Treaty, Schengen Treaty, Lisbon 2010 Treaty, etc., creating damage for the others, which undermined the credibility of the EU. Order needs to return to the EU by giving it powers. By giving it power means to correct countries and, in extreme cases, punish countries, for example, by suspending and eventually removing countries from the treaties they break, or the EU as a whole. It is not in the first place important what the EU does for its citizens. The most important thing is that it does right the things it does. It should have sufficient powers and means to be able to take responsibility for its tasks. Right now, that is often not the case, leading to damage for the member states, undermining the credibility of the EU. This is exactly what happened in the last 10 years and led to the present crisis. The EU should become a synonym for success again, like in the time the EU only was a single market, and that is only possible if it has the means to do the things it does right. So, the way forward is: the EU Commission and EU Parliament should more often say no to new tasks if it doesn't get sufficient powers and means to be able to take responsibilities for them. The EU should examine all its present tasks to check whether it needs more powers and means. If it doesn't get these, fine, but then these tasks should go back to the nation states. The future motto should be: responsibility should lie where the power lies. The EU should be radical in this. It should become possible to remove member states, even against their will, from a treaty or the EU as a whole, in order to be able to protect those who do observe the treaties against those who don't. Vetoes should disappear. Everything should be decided by double majorities. Countries who do not want this should better leave the EU. And apart from all this, Strasbourg should no longer be a place for EU Parliament. The city should be compensated for this loss, for example, by concentrating all military and foreign policy services in Strasbourg. On this way, the EU will start functioning again. The much needed order will return. Anti-EU will once again stand for success, which in the end is its real legitimization. Thank you.